third for setting a screen.
Because of physical play, although Jordan Taylor just got caught with a moving screen.
Pick and roll. And a foul. Offensive foul coming up there. Battlehawks standing right there.
Izzo dying for a moving screen.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Moving Screen Podcast. I'm Brendan Quinn here with Dylan Burkhart on location in Ann Arbor. In person, face-to-face, no computer screens. Beers.
We still have computer screens, but we're not looking at each other through them.
Yes,
we're ready to
very
go.
Personal,
It's
yes.
Moving Screen Bowl
Intimate.
podcast. It has to be
Intimate,
intimate.
I'm going to say.
It is. We're in your house here. It's a nice little setup.
Home office. I'm drinking a Super Trooper Brown Ale from Petoskey Brewing. Do I pronounce that correctly? Everyone.
Petoskey.
Okay, I think I used to say Petoskey, and people make fun.
As they should.
What do you got?
I have a Ernest Brewworks Beer Pressure New England IPA. Pretty good.
These are just randos from my fridge. We're just pulling what we got. So,
Big day.
big day. Michigan State at Michigan. Part 2 of this year's rivalry. Obviously, Michigan with the win. Much needed win. I think we talked about it before. Like, I did kind of feel like this was a bigger game for Michigan than it was for Michigan State in terms of overall worth or what a loss would mean. I mean, like 3 straight losses for Michigan State's a big deal. There are problems there that need to be talked about, but a loss for Michigan at home would have been the 5th straight in the rivalry, would have been 4-8 in the league, 4th straight home loss. Like, it would have been kind of back-breaking time in terms of this season and Juwan Howard's first year and everything that goes into that.
Yeah, you can't lose at home in this spot if you're Michigan. And I think they played like it, right? Like, they played their ass off from the opening jump, even when they weren't really playing particularly well. And if Michigan State loses this game, fine, right? It's another road game. It's a chance it will be a season-changing thing if you can go and win it. But for Michigan, they needed a home win, and they needed a quality home win, and there's not that many more chances left for quality home wins on the schedule. So you're running out of times where you can say, oh, we'll get the next one. And they needed it today, and they got it.
Yeah. So we're going to open up here. We're going to talk about the game itself, kind of break down the matchup, and then we'll go big picture a little bit on each team kind of moving forward from here. But first of all, what do you have kind of on the site that people should be looking forward to and that any straggler non-subscribers should bust out the credit cards and pay for?
So we have all the coverage from the game today. Max wrote about Michigan's ball screen defense. Ethan wrote about Xavier Simpson and his crazy week. And then game today, I wrote my recap. We'll have a lot more coming in the next few days. You can get a 50% off. Sign up if you use the code RIVALS for the rivalry weekend. So if you sign up this weekend, you can get that. And there's a lot to check out. So stop by.
Love it.
How about over at The Athletic?
I wrote about Juwan Howard for tomorrow. I think this was a really big week for him. We'll talk about it a little bit. But between handling the Xavier Simpson suspension, this game, I thought that coaching-wise, Michigan did a terrific job today in terms of getting that defense ready to go, coming up with a plan that worked and was feasible. We'll talk about that, but I just kind of talk about what this meant for Juwan Howard and kind of taking a step forward. It's, I don't know, you tell me, it still has seemed like almost kind of just like fresh and strange and maybe a little weird, like this like Juwan Howard as head coach thing, and just little by little, it's just kind of getting a little bit more normal. And this week, just to me, I don't know, I'm probably just reading into things, but to me, it just seemed like a step, him dealing with a first big controversy and then winning his first game in this rivalry. So that's going to be posted tonight, and I'll be at Michigan State on Monday for Tom Izzo's press conference. Got some Michigan State coverage coming. And then this week I will be driving to Champaign on Tuesday for Michigan State, Illinois on Tuesday night, driving from Champaign to Evanston for Michigan Northwestern on Wednesday, and we'll have coverage of both of those games. And more importantly, barring any disasters, knock on wood, I should have a pretty large project being published on Wednesday. Long awaited. Hopefully we're at the finish line. But something I'm excited about, and I hope you all enjoy. So that's what's coming up. But in terms of the game, let's get into this, man. Do you want to start with the defense? Because I think that's where...
It's probably where you have to start, right?
Yeah.
I think that's where you have to start. Michigan finally figured out a way to slow down Cassius Winston for the first time in 2 years. That is what this game came down to, and it was always what this game was going to come down to. And Michigan went and they hedged every ball screen, and they put Eli Brooks on Cassius Winston all the way wherever he went. I thought he did a great job of making it hard whenever Winston caught the ball. He was there. Whenever Winston came off a ball screen, he was there. He was fantastic. And it's one of those things where you look at it and you kind of say, well, why wasn't that the case to begin with? Like, if you asked me 3 weeks ago who Michigan's best perimeter defender was this season, I would say Eli Brooks. Yeah. And it was Xavier Simpson who spent more time on him in the first game. I think Eli Brooks spent some time on him, but I think you have to give a lot of credit for Michigan for coming up with this plan and at the same time not trying to have Simpson tasked with that assignment allows him to be a lot more impactful on offense, save his legs a little bit, and that all kind of came together perfectly. Some of it, I think you have to say, like, Cassius Winston's played 3 of the 5 best games he's ever played against Michigan. Yeah. He's not going to be able to play at that level every game, right? Like, he missed some shots today that he would hit maybe in another game, and defense isn't really going to impact that. But I think Michigan made him uncomfortable, and I think that is really the first thing you have to do, right? Yeah. And where he struggled this year has been when teams kind of blow up the point of attack just enough where he can't get to his spots and just really feel everything out. So that's what it comes down to for me.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't play well.
Yeah,
Cassius didn't play well. But a lot of that has to do with the defense. I mean, you have to give credit where it's due. It seemed like there was so much traffic everywhere he turned. Isaiah Livers put it the best way. Like, anytime he came off a screen, he was turning 4 or 5 different directions at any given time, right? He was just kind of looking for anything, and there was always arms. And I thought Michigan's like really active feet, really active hands. They just always were just they were really dialed in defensively, and it was clearly the point of emphasis all week, along with the transition defense. There were guys shouting out assignments. You never saw 2 guys running toward the ball. Like, it was just a much more cohesive kind of overall plan.
Yeah, the way that Michigan was able to help down into the paint on the roll, they almost took a charge. Looked like it almost was a charge with Livers, and they just really impacted that play, right, where they could help and then recover back. And when Michigan gave up threes, it was to guys who didn't make them, right? Other than Winston, Michigan State only made 3 threes. So if you're giving up threes, I don't know who on Michigan State side there's not that guy where you catch the ball and everyone's looking like, oh, that's money, right?
Yeah.
I don't know who that is on this Michigan State team right now, and that means that hedging as they did makes a lot of sense, right? Like, because you can really blow up everything else, and Michigan State couldn't figure out where to kill them, right? I thought they did a good job on Tillman, because what happened in the last game was that Tillman really killed Michigan in that downhill stuff after the kind of like a kick and drive, and he never looked comfortable offensively. No. And I think that comes down to how effectively Michigan helped on the wings, just like dug in, and just a lot of deflections, a lot of just good energy on defense for Michigan that just wasn't there communication wise or anything at East Lansing.
And part of that is the difference of playing at home and on the road. Like, you're at Breslin, you got to think those kind of more auxiliary pieces they're far more likely to hit those open looks.
Those are completely flipped. You look at how a guy like DeJulius shoots versus how a guy like Gabe Brown shoots at home versus away, right? Like, your role players you can't count on the road. That's what we always say. I think defensively, though, for Michigan, it also is what happens when Isaiah Livers is on the court.
No doubt.
He's been around. He's done this a few times. He's pointing. He's running around, getting people in their places. That's a huge just piece to have. And you have to also look at Brandon Johns is a has improved exponentially in terms of defensive positioning, rotations, being able to stay in front of perimeter guys.
Right.
He was a loss.
He was a total liability. Yes.
So he's not a liability now, and he's only playing limited minutes, right? Michigan never went two bigs. It's impossible to guard this Michigan State ball screen offense if you have two bigs out there that they can ball screen.
Yeah.
Right. So
right.
I guess Michigan did go two bigs for like 2 minutes, but either way, like all of those things are going to make Michigan a better defensive team, regardless, even if Winston does play better, right? So I think you have to look at some of those factors too.
Agree. And like, yeah, I mean, having Johns as like a 18, 20 minute game, a 20 minute a game guy just makes all the difference when suddenly there's this guy coming off the bench who's now bouncing around, and it's not even like he might not even get the offensive rebounds, but his tip outs, just the space that he can eat up. And you want to talk about guys who can kind of cheat and move, like he's athletic enough that, he can. A guy like Tillman's coming in. There was that one play, I think it was Johns, where Tillman did catch the ball just inside the 3-point line, kind of two dribble to the inside circle. And
Michigan was there.
John slid all the way over, two hands up, and Tillman picked up his dribble in the middle of the lane and had to kick out, right? The last game, he's either drawing a foul, getting 2 free throws, or he's scoring all game. I really think that they were locked in on game plan, film. They really understood what went wrong the last game.
Yeah, if you look at the last game, the game plan was gone by the under 16.
Yeah.
Michigan was just scrambling. Like, even when Michigan scored in that game, it was Xavier Simpson stealing the ball after a defensive rebound, just like complete hustle plays, which is all well and fine. But Michigan did not look like a well-organized team in East Lansing. And today, they were very locked in, I think, from the start. And I think what you have to do against Michigan State is keep the game in front of you, right? Michigan State never had a run bigger than 5 points. So they never scored more than 5 unanswered.
Wow.
So they always were able to just get that stop or that one answer.
Yeah.
And then even when Michigan State would cut it to 1, Michigan would, what I mean? Yeah. Like, Michigan's offense wasn't great, but you keep everything in front of you. You don't let the game get away. And that's when Michigan State's dangerous, when they can go on those 9 or 12-point runs, right? And if you take away the transition, you take away anything easy, then Michigan State is kind of where we've talked about Michigan being offensively at times. Who's the secondary creator?
And here's the thing: when you keep Michigan State in front of you, and you do limit the transition, it can really start to turn into just a lot of standing around and watching Cassius Winston. Like the ball movement dies. It's just kind of just him just trying to make something work. They had 4 assists from guys not named Cassius Winston in this game. Like the ball movement was just kind of stagnant. And yeah, I mean, and shooting is shooting. What'd they go? 6 for 24, 6 for 23. Their 33% shooting overall was the lowest of the season. There is some issues on Michigan State's side of things.
And I think we can get to that. We can probably flip over and talk to them. But one thing I would point out, Michigan, 5 out of the last 6 games held its opponents under a point per possession.
Wow.
Before that, they were up around allowing like 1.12 or something per game. Or per possession. That's a huge defensive improvement where this team has started to kind of figure it out. And I think Brandon John's improvement is a huge part of that. I think he was a big reason they're bad. Yeah. Now he's a big reason they are good.
And Franz. I think Franz is way better.
Yeah. And these guys have never played, right? Even Austin Davis.
Yeah.
Austin Davis was like unplayable defensively. Now he's learning where to be, even if he's not going to really impact the shot. He can use his size. He can do whatever. And like now you look at Michigan and guys are in their roles just across the board. And Isaiah Livers really makes that happen.
Yeah, like what did Davis today played 12 minutes. Like that's a little bit more reasonable than some of these other games. I think like 8 to 12 minutes for Austin Davis. That's right.
Michigan's rotation was 8-man rotation, 1 big, 1 guard, 1 wing combo forward. That's what you need. And they haven't had that for a month and a half. Yeah. So I think that's really important to point out where, like, you just look like Franz no longer being guarded by Aaron Henry or or whoever, right? He's guarded by Gabe Brown.
Right.
Livers has to draw an assignment that takes everyone else away. So there's just less pressure on everyone else to overachieve, and the whole situation kind of starts to fit together.
let's talk a little bit about Michigan's offense before we jump over and try to dissect Michigan State here a little bit. And it's kind of building on that point of the versatility that suddenly kind of emerges when all these pieces are together. You know, Xavier Simpson obviously was the big push early, making those threes. Like, that was for a game that started with no rhythm or anything to it. They started 1 for 10, and then
Simpson hit the one big one early,
Mm-hmm.
and then I think you have to give a lot of credit to how well Michigan offensive rebounded early. I think that really set the tone. They didn't always make those kick-out threes, but they did make a few of them, and I don't think Michigan State expects to get out-rebounded like that early.
No. And it was that combined with Michigan State's turnovers too.
That too. Michigan was turning over a lot early. Both teams were early on. It was a weird offensive game. Michigan made, I think, 3 twos in the first half. So it was all the threes early. Because then Simpson hit 2 more in the first half, right?
Yes. And, you know, the thing that got me, I think I tweeted with like 3 minutes into the second half, I said, Brooks, Wagner, and Teskey are all scoreless, and like, I don't care what happens the rest of this game. If those three are not they're not going to win this game. Like, that's just not feasible. They ended up with 26 of Michigan's final 44 points in the game. So it's like, to be able to get through 22 minutes of basketball with those three guys being scoreless and win this game shows kind of all these different pieces.
Helps when
you just aren't you're just not kind of like pigeonholed into one thing, right? Like, the amount of conversations we had earlier in the year where it's just like, they gotta get Teskey post touches because there's no offense beyond that, right? Like, and now suddenly there's guys making shots all over the place.
Yeah, and it helps when you only give up 23 points in the first half, right?
Well,
so
of course,
when your defense plays that well, you buy yourself that margin for error. And it was, those Simpson threes were huge because a lot of them came in possessions where there wasn't a lot else going on, right? He was also wide open on a few of them.
Open.
Rocket Watt's not a good defensive game.
Minus 22.
We can talk about that later. But I think in this, Michigan State overall did a really good job guarding Michigan's ball screens. Like, Michigan wasn't getting easy looks out of ball screens. It had to really work for anything that it got. In the second half, though, what you hit on is what stood out to me, where a couple different guys got buckets in key spots, right? Whether it was Franz on a post-up or
his
Johns
M1
had
was
a
huge.
that M1 post-up. Johns had a big putback. Teskey had a putback. Brooks hit back-to-back threes. The second three was on almost an identical set to what Michigan ran on the last play against Ohio State that he missed.
Yep.
And that was those 2 threes, or I think 2 of the 3 or 4 possessions where the lead was down to 1. So those are big shots. So Michigan got just enough.
The 8-man rotation, all 8 had a field goal in the second half of that game.
And no one played over 32 minutes.
It's pretty good. You go from a team that had no depth or real balance to suddenly a lot of depth or not a lot of depth, but good depth and really solid balance.
Yeah, so
weird the way this works.
I like to point out that a lot of times the depth is overrated in college basketball because you really only need 8 guys to play a game.
Right, but
depth comes into play when one of those 8 gets hurt. So that's been Michigan's big problem here, right?
And those 3 have to be contributors. It can't just be 3 bodies who are just taking up minutes. Like, you need them to do something when they're out there. And DeJulius, who is a guy that I think has been easy to kind of criticize of late because he hasn't played particularly well, played okay. Hit a couple big shots.
Best game he's played in a long time.
And was definitely into it and engaged and
a floor slap from the other side of the rivalry.
Woo, right in Cassius Winston's face. They're lucky they didn't go and rip off 15 straight right then, in my opinion. But I would not poke that bear. But that's it was a bad day all around for Cassius.
But don't you think that the fact that there's less pressure on DeJulius, Johns, and Davis,
totally,
it makes it easier to do a job, not the whole job, right? I think that's really the key when you look at what they're doing.
And like Austin Davis is a great example of it because he's sprinting up and down the floor like he knows he's getting out in 3 minutes, right? So he's going to go balls to the wall for those 3 minutes. There were times where he'd be like playing like 6-minute stretches, and you're like, this is just not in any way feasible. It's not even fair to the guy, really, you know?
Yeah. And you're not ever having to they did do it once, but the too big look, that needs to just go away. And it really couldn't go away without Livers, but with Livers in the lineup, I think it has to mostly just.
I think that goes away, and we start seeing more of the small ball for those maybe those couple minutes where they'd go and do something different. I think, and we saw 2 minutes, the last 2 minutes of the game. But it was probably for free throw shooting.
Switch everything, free throw shooting, that kind of stuff.
But I do think if Livers is back and you can start practicing with him, right? It's hard to just throw out a small ball lineup if Livers hasn't been practicing and you haven't really put Johns there in practice. But now you get some time to actually work on that. That's your alternative look, not the too big,
Yeah, and if you remember,
hopefully for Michigan,
the game Livers got hurt is when we were talking about we're going to start seeing Johns at the 5 because he had just done it against Oregon, and then that just got completely thrown away.
Yep.
It's hard also to play small in the Big Ten. I mean, there's no small teams in the Big Ten. It's
true.
You've got dudes every night who are a fucking load. Right?
Yeah,
but there's no easy nights.
Yeah, but the fact that you have Teskey, so you can go match up, and then a couple minutes here and there, try to make teams match up with you.
It's a good
card,
especially in March, especially if you play against a.
That's the thing.
Smaller, mid-major, or whatever. It's a good thing to have.
For sure.
Without a doubt.
For sure. Michigan State?
Yeah, let's talk about Michigan State, because a lot to digest on that side. Where do you even start?
I mean, I'll put it this way. I was asked after the game, all right, gun to your head, still, which one is going further in March? I would still probably say Michigan State, mainly because Winston-Tillman duo I would take over most in basketball, but neither are playing particularly well. I mean, other than Tillman's defense is still going to basically be pretty reliable come hell or high water, but neither.
I want to talk about Tillman.
Okay, then let's talk about Tillman.
I feel like he's a scapegoat unfairly.
Okay.
Even today, I feel like Izzo kind of blamed him.
Right.
And I think it's a similar thing to what we saw at times with Michigan, where just because the one guy has to play the whole game because no one else is good enough to play doesn't mean it's his fault when he's too tired to get up and down the court by the end of the game.
Sure. I mean, I don't disagree with...
Xavier Tillman played 37 minutes.
Yeah.
Was the Ken Pom MVP, had 17 points, 12 rebounds, 2 blocks, 2 steals, and never got in foul trouble. Mm-hmm. I thought he dominated the game defensively. Mm-hmm. He gave Teskey nothing. Mm-hmm. Remember, Teskey scored in the post a lot up there.
He did.
Michigan really couldn't get any easy twos. I think that's mostly due to Tillman. Mm-hmm. He missed a few threes, but I don't know. I don't understand the idea that he didn't play well. I thought he played about as well as anyone on that team. I thought the bigger problem was who else is going to step up for that team.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, they're getting nothing from around them. And, you need, the way everyone else, but I think the point is, the way everyone else is playing right now, you need those two to just be, unbelievable, basically. And that's not fair.
What's he supposed to do? I mean, he's not a post-up scorer. His job is to run the defense.
Yeah.
Michigan State played a good defensive game. I mean, it
played okay defensive game.
I think, stuff happened and you gave up some shots, but it's not like they gave up 60% shooting around the basket. You know what I mean? His job was done defensively.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of this game, going out, let's go into the game instead of what's wrong with Michigan State big picture. Let's actually talk about this game because we're sitting next to each other in there, and they start fucking with these lineups early on when nothing is going right as it is, right? And at one point they get to the first media timeout. I think it's 3-3, right? And now here comes all right. So Winston sailed that dumbass pass out of bounds, and it wasn't good, and Izzo got all pissed. Understandable, because that's all they've been talking about this week. But he puts in Foster Lawyer, and he puts in Marble and Bingham, and I don't even know who else, whatever. And it is immediately, a 9-0 run?
It was a 12-2 run, I think, from Michigan after that. And then...
Well, hold on. I'm going to stick to this point, because, the way that, I look at it, when you look at the game as segments, right? If it's 3-3 at the first media timeout, I consider that, those first 4 minutes of the game basically didn't happen, right? It's still 0-0.
Yeah.
And now you have a starting lineup that is... Michigan's making no substitutions, right? I think they made one sub at the first media timeout.
I don't even...
And Michigan State made 3. And now it's this huge disadvantage in what is basically a nothing game.
To be fair, everyone was sucking wind at that first media timeout. I saw multiple, because there was like one foul, and it was a lot of transition with all the turnovers they were running. I thought dudes looked tired on both sides. So I don't think it was that crazy to make subs, especially because it's not like they were playing well. I think the bigger problem is if you're going to talk about these substitution problems for taking Winston out of the game, he still played 36 minutes. Like, it's not like he was out of the game that long. The funny part about that was Simpson threw a one-handed pass a few minutes later, and then Juwan took him out and immediately gave up a run that almost evened up the game. So, and then both teams basically stopped turning over from there. So maybe the coaches know what they're doing.
Well, that's fair. But it's more like, and like, this has just been something that, you know, in 3 years, whatever, of covering Michigan State basketball, it's always kind of bugged me. Just in these, like, he does it every game regardless of scenario. And there's just some games where I'm like, it just doesn't, like, I get why you do it every game and that this is just what it is. There's just some games where I'm like, there was a game at Indiana one year where it just didn't make any sense and he did it anyway. And like a bad start just got way worse. Today, I was just like,
does he always sub Cassius
always
at the under 16? Not Cassius.
Well, I mean, he makes 3 or 4 subs at the first media timeout, basically.
Michigan's like, but there's some guys that you just are like starters in role only, right? Like he's made starting lineup changes. So it's not like the bench guys are not necessarily that far behind, right? Like Malik Hall for Julius Marble, like,
right.
Oh, like that's not like a crazy substitution. It's not like Foster Lawyer for Cassius Winston at the under 16, right? Like those are different.
This is
right?
true, yes. But yeah, I mean, there is Aaron Henry remains just enigmatic, offensively. That is.
I thought he had some decent moments.
Yeah,
today.
I mean, he had that real nice long two, that kind of step in jumper that was quick, confident, good looking shot. But like this is also one of those games where like the whole like Aaron Henry's the third best player theory has always the caveat of it is okay on games where Cassius isn't able to go out and score 30 or be whatever. Henry's a guy who can go and get you 18 points or something like that, right? And he's just not there. Gabe Brown just missing looks. That happens when you're a 3-point shooter, right?
Well, yeah, but that's for me the biggest difference in this team. Like Gabe Brown needs
the 4.
Gabe Brown needs to be a 40% 3-point shooter.
And he
might be, but he's just not automatic in the sense McQuaid was. And
no.
I know he was sick. Like
yeah.
he needs to give them more. And he had a huge game, I thought, in terms of how he impacted it in East Lansing when these two teams played.
His
right?
line today, 21 minutes, 0 points, 0 for 2 on 2s, 0 for 3 on 3s, 2 defensive rebounds, 1 assist, 1 foul. That's pretty bare for 21 minutes.
Oh yeah, like those are the threes when you get up and you're Michigan and you're like, yeah, we got a little lucky, right? So that's something you look at for sure.
The just total lack of consistency out of the 2 position and getting nothing out of the 4 every night. If there's going to be a downfall for this team, that's it.
And so this is interesting because I think the first meeting, Michigan State could kind of hide the 4 because it was just Johns and Davis or whoever was out there. And you didn't care if Bingham was out there. These guys could just kind of do what they do, right? In this game, they actually had the guard. And whether it's John's improvement, Livers playing, that Bingham only played 9 minutes, right? Like you just can't trust him in a game where like John's hit a 3, right? You just can't have that. It's a lot harder to play those guys in this situation than it was at that point.
Right. Do you think that this is just a shitty stretch that Michigan State is in? Or do you think that this is like systemic type stuff that speaks to a team that is way more flawed than we thought and its ceiling is lower than...
I think you're only as good as who and where you play. And we said this before, Michigan State's like if these games were just randomized and they came to what's their conference record right now? 8-5. If they were 8-5 and they had lost the hard games weren't stacked together, well then you wouldn't think it's that crazy, right? If they didn't play their first 5 games at home, you wouldn't be that worried about it wouldn't seem like a downfall because it would have just been they're about an 8-5 team, right? Like, so I think the whole idea of losses and clumps is going to be overrated for any Big Ten team all year, just because it's really hard. I mean, it's not like, so they lost at Wisconsin, pain in the ass to play against a pain in the ass team. They lost at home to Penn State, a team that's as hot as any team in the Big Ten.
Sure.
Just won at Michigan too. And they lost at Michigan. Like, it's not like those are bad losses.
Okay, so are they bad losses? No. The thing is, Michigan State is a team with top 10 in the country expectations and is a team with...
Well, at what point have they been meeting those?
I don't disagree, but you have one of the best centers in the country, 5 men in the country. You have arguably the best point guard in the country. Like, in theory, you would have the parts to kind of be a team that is in the conversation. And those are the expectations, that right or wrong, and whether they actually align with what's on the roster. First of all, that's certainly the expectation that Izzo's holding them to. So to be 8-5 in the league with 3 straight losses when you haven't played well, it's one thing if you play well and lose. They haven't really played well, I don't think.
Well, I think they're good enough that if they play well, they're going to win.
That's fair.
I mean, you can play. It's great teams can play poorly and win. I don't know if they're good enough to do that, but the scary thing for me about Michigan State is they are in Ken Palm's. We talked about the Tier A, Tier B games. Michigan State is 2 Tier A wins, which is basically top 50 game adjusted for where it is.
Yeah,
and they have 7 Tier A losses. So they're 2-7 in Tier A games. The scary part about that is they still have to play 6 of their last 7 games are Tier A games. So
and 4 are on the road, or 3 of those games are on the road. Those Tier A games. And
what I would always say when Michigan was losing games is games are on the schedule. That's an opportunity. Nothing's changed about Michigan State that makes me think they can't go into Illinois and win, right? So you don't have to win all of these games. And the Big Ten's good. It's not like you can just get to 15 wins and not.
But that's the thing.
Take some lumps.
You need to win some of these games. Like, I understand and that's the thing. Like, when you say that these aren't bad losses, no doubt. But like, okay, yeah, these aren't bad losses if you're okay finishing 12-8 or 11-9 and finishing 4th in the conference and being a 4 seed. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, the fact
that's not what they're supposed to be, right?
The fact that Michigan State's best Big Ten win is at Minnesota is a little ugly.
Yeah, and right now this team has 12-8. 11-9 written all over it, considering the schedule. Of those games at Illinois, at Maryland, at Penn State, is there a win in there anywhere?
I'll go on the record. I'll say they're winning on Tuesday at Illinois.
Ooh, baby, okay.
Write it down.
All right.
I mean, my question, though, is, like, if you want to look big picture, who are the guys that are going to step up in those spots? Like, I don't even know who. Like, when Michigan is struggle, it's like, well, Johns has to get better. Michigan State, I guess it's good to have options, but I'm not sure that I would put my chips on a certain square, right? Like, for at the 2 or the 4. Rocket Watts really struggled defensively, I thought. I think he has all the talent in the world, but I don't know what you're getting from him on a game-to-game basis.
And the thing was, that Wisconsin game, I thought that was a launch pad type.
It's a nice rocket.
Game. Thank you. I thought that was a launch pad, no pun intended.
Pun was certainly intended.
It wasn't. No, it actually wasn't. It worked out well, but it wasn't.
I thought it was Gabe Brown, and I am willing.
I don't know. I would love to know how
sick
he is. Yeah, I would love to know how he's actually feeling.
All of a sudden, he plays like the 3 worst games of the year.
Right.
Makes me think he's not all good, but he also hadn't been. He's made 3 threes in the last 5 games. That's not great, right?
And then, Kithier's not even there. And, like, say what you will for, like, I don't think anyone would expect Kithier to be lighting the world on fire, but he's a body. He's useful when they need guys. It changes their rotation. He's reliable. He's not great, but I think Graham wrote a good column about that where it's like, Thomas Kithier is a Big Ten basketball player. And like that was basically the point. You know what I mean? Of like,
Yeah, and
you
we
go
don't-
in and play 15 minutes, and that's fine.
And that's really important,
Right.
again, to keep everyone in their role, right? And you're stretching guys. Clearly not a lot of trust for Julius Marble. 3 minutes. Bingham only played 9 minutes. Like, is Malik Hall the guy? What is Malik Hall's thing going to be? Like, how would you define Malik Hall's game?
The biggest goal for Malik Hall is to be Kenny Goins without having to wait until the second half of his senior year.
But he hasn't really shot threes.
No, but
Right,
he can. I think that's going to be a thing. It's just he's just a freshman, and
Seems like that's what you want
they
to get
also
out of
don't
him.
really dial that up. Like he's not turning down that look. He doesn't even really get it.
Yeah, that
They don't really go into pick and pop type
no
stuff.
Those pick and pops for like Xavier Tillman in East Lansing. I think he shot his first pick and pop three, made it like no hesitation.
Mm-hmm.
Today, each one he was thinking about like I don't really want to shoot it, but I'm going to shoot it, and then he missed them. He was much more decisive offensively, I thought, at the game in
I agree.
Breslin Center.
I agree.
And I don't know if that's because of something Michigan was doing defensively or what, or just confidence of playing at home.
I think there is, in terms of like addressing what's going on here, I think there's a kind of bigger type solution that we're probably not able to really come up with. And I think a lot of it's going to have to come to coaching and trying to find solutions to these things with the bodies you have and not expecting Aaron Henry to suddenly decide to be an all-conference player. Like they need to find solutions to whether it's putting the ball into different spots on the floor or putting different guys into different scenarios or whatever it may be. But like last year, the solution was literally changing the way that they played. And I think I don't know what it is. I mean, no way qualified to come up with that. But like I asked that question the other night when I said, if you guys want to change things, do you feel like you have the personnel that can actually process that and do it at this point of the year because you don't have guys like Kenny and Matt who are experienced enough to make in-season changes like that? He didn't really answer the question, but my premise remains.
I don't know if that's an overreaction.
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, they've lost 5 of their last 8, and it's February. Their next game's on February 11th. Like, if you're not going to, so it's either hope guys get better or figure out a way to do things differently, right?
It has to be hope guys get better because I don't think they trust the other. It's not that the other players other than Tillman, Winston, and Henry. If you told Izzo 5-on-5 game, 5 minutes, you can only take 5 guys, I don't even know who you'd pick. Right? Like who would be 4 and 5?
Yeah.
And that's the problem with this team. And that the only way forward is to hope that those guys are all young. They're all sophomores, freshmen. They're going to get better. I think you just have to keep going at it. And it doesn't matter if you lose some of these conference games. That's not the goal. They've won how many Big Ten trophies in the last 3 years?
Yeah.
That's not what Cassius Winston wants to win in his senior year. I'll tell you that.
I'm sure.
They've done that.
Yeah. And I mean, a lot of this Cassius is his own other story. And there's a lot going on there. And he can at times look very mentally and physically exhausted, and everyone knows why and all that stuff. And that it can't just be ignored. That's definitely a thing. So,
and even on the court, he's doing almost more, like he's having to do almost more scoring, I think, this year than he had to last year at times, right? Because those other options are so unreliable.
I'll tell you what, and this is like, it's totally revisionist and it doesn't really matter. It's a total moot point. But goddamn, that Hauser waiver is looking pretty goddamn big, man. Right?
Yeah, he would be.
Shit.
We said that when we were talking about
but
it.
It's just like, if you would have told me then that they would literally be getting nothing out of the 4 pretty much every night.
We said that before the season. I said, who
that
the hell is going to play the 2
At some point,
and the 4?
I imagined that someone was going to put it together and be at least serviceable. I mean, they're just getting nothing.
What about going small?
All right.
Put Aaron Henry at the 4.
I love the Aaron Henry at the 4.
Put Rocket Watson at the 2.
Uh-huh.
Put Gabe Brown at the 3.
Mm-hmm.
I think Henry would be better offensively being guarded by 4s. I just like, why not try that? It seems like something that could.
Otis wants to come in the
bit.
office. I'm going to let him in.
Otis wants to join the podcast. I don't see the downside of that sort of. I know it's not traditionally what they do, but if you're so worried about the production at the 4, I guess that means that you're putting 2 2s on the court and you don't really trust your 2s either. But or even Kyle Arnsmore, right? Like, is there like a minutes limit to how much he can actually play in a given game? I mean, I know he's banged up all the time. Like, that could be part of it, but I don't know.
I like it. I'll try it at this point, you know.
Yeah.
More and more Aaron Henry is looking like he might be a, small ball 4 as opposed to ever actually being a true 3.
I don't think there's any, and that's how people always act like it's a bad thing.
That's bullshit, right?
Yeah, it's just a way to use his skill set.
The biggest problem with that idea is Henry's total inconsistency in rebounding, really. In Izzo's mind. I'm just telling you what is probably preventing that from happening. I mean, he had 8 boards today, and that's great. And he had 1 board the game before.
I don't know. You have Gabe Brown super long. I just think that'd be a good look. It's obviously hard to experiment when you're down guys and getting hurt and whatever else. I don't know. I was shocked the line was Michigan. It went up to Michigan State favored by 3. Like,
that was weird.
The spot really played to Michigan, and really the matchup with Livers just plays to Michigan so much more, and he really does tilt that, I think. And we saw that today.
All right. What else do we got?
Do we want to do any Michigan big picture stuff?
Sure.
Right. We talked.
I wouldn't overreact from this game, but
yeah,
there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of big picture positives to take from this. I'll tell you, and they are a couple blown plays against Ohio State away from probably feeling really good.
Yeah, it's really hard to figure out how to look at it, right? So Michigan lost to Illinois on a buzzer beater, won 2 games, including a really good win against Rutgers on a neutral, lost to Ohio State on a flagrant foul monitor call with 30 seconds left, and then beat Michigan State. If you win one of those 2 other games, you're feeling really good.
Absolutely.
And you're right where you want to be. The Livers thing, I feel like I just keep saying that, but it just changes everything about this Michigan team. And I think you saw growth in how Michigan played without him over the last month. And now you kind of have a situation where I'm curious what this looks like going forward. Obviously, it's hard to just regain your footing and find yourself, but if Livers is just a 30-minute a game guy from here on out and he's good to go, like, this is a different team. I think that's the biggest thing that changes Michigan's big picture thoughts.
And the goal right now is go win at Northwestern, beat Indiana at home, and that puts you at 7-7 in the league, and it's kind of a pretty nice reset. And they'll be in pretty decent position in the league standings. I'd probably put them around like the 7 spot, I imagine, when the dust would clear after everyone plays 2 more games. If you're at 7-7, you're probably going to be around 7-8, somewhere in there.
Yeah, and then it gets real though.
Then it gets
4
real.
Out of the last 6 on the road.
Damn straight, right?
But you can go and seem like, all right, we're back to what we thought we were. Let's go do something and remind people that we're actually a good team.
Sure.
I just think they have a confidence with that rotation like this, just that they didn't have for stretches in January.
No, they look fun. I mean, they look fundamentally different in like every way. Ball, like the way they play, their rotation, their attitude, like across the board, they look different.
Yeah. Xavier Simpson, I think we didn't really talk about him at all, but he had his game that he needed to have. This is the kind of game seniors need to have in this rivalry. Just about every senior that's come through this rivalry has had it on one side or the other at some point. And think you have to give him a lot of credit. And it was a interesting week, so to speak. I think he was pretty much in the middle of that Ohio State loss, right? And then the suspension. But I thought I know you like to always harp on him getting out over his skis. But I thought he did a really good job of not trying to do too much, right?
There was only one play.
What, the one-handed pass?
No, the step back 3. The side step going to his left, where it was just, but it was kind of that stay with, like, everything's going, you're doing exactly what you need to do, and it was just a forced shot with like 20 seconds on the shot clock.
So I drove up, and I was super early, and he was the only one on the court shooting threes like an hour and a half before the game. I think I saw him miss 15 in a row, but he got that shot calibrated because he was out there way before. Like, there was no one in there yet. It was right after the women's team was done practicing, and I mean, this game, he said all the right things after the game. He didn't want to be selfish. It wasn't about him. It wasn't about suspension. It wasn't about anything. But let's be serious. He walked off the court with the damn game ball. Everyone knew what this game was about. And I think that's important. And I think, honestly, his teammates wanted to play well for that. Because
the shot to the ego, if he lost his last 5 in this series after all the shit that was made about him being better than Cassius Winston.
To be fair, he never said any of that.
Oh, no doubt. But, like, I mean, this has been the story of the rivalry for 3 years.
He had to deal with, he was on the opposite side for longer than Winston was on the other side, right? So, this could be the last Michigan State game with Xavier Simpson and Cassius Winston, right? Like, that's a thing.
It's like shed a tear.
I mean, it was a good chat. I'm trying to think of anyone who had kind of that 4-year.
What did it end up as? So 3-4? 3 wins for Cassius, 4
wins because they just did one game and
3 wins for Xavier, 4 wins for Cassius, right?
Yes, because they split and then it was 2-3. 2-4. No, it's 5-3. 5 wins for, because Michigan State won 4 games in a row.
Yeah.
They split when they were both freshmen.
Yeah, but those don't really count because Xavier wasn't playing.
I mean, he played.
Not really. Dirk Walton played.
Simpson played, especially in the game at Michigan. There's an article about him on umhoops.com if you want to look it up.
Promo code Rivals. I
was looking it up. No, but he did play actually a key part in that second game.
It feels like it was 700 years ago.
I just think it's worth, like, this was a good back and forth chapter of the rivalry, and
it was
fitting. Like, it would have really just put the clamp on it if Michigan State had won this game.
Yeah,
and Michigan played like they knew that, right? I mean,
yes,
those dudes all saw what happened last year, even the dudes they weren't really playing.
Right. And Juwan Howard, well aware of what this meant. I mean, they had all these recruits there. They were at risk of losing their 5th straight in the rivalry. Livers was saying that, like, in pregame, they were all sitting in the locker room and they could hear Juwan in the coach's room, like, getting hyped up as if he was playing, like, yelling. And then he came barreling into the locker room and was, like, getting in guys' faces, like, are you ready? And da-da-da-da. Like, it's just a totally different world over there compared to recent years.
And I'm sure that the way Juwan Howard is described by some Beeline holdovers is also through a very different lens, right?
Sure.
Imagine some of I assume there are other teams where they might think Juwan Howard's tame for all we know, right?
Yeah, but, like, I mean, I've been in a Michigan State pregame locker room.
Under Beeline.
Yeah. And like, he literally was like, walk in the room, be like, okay, guys,
That's what I'm saying. Like,
put the hands together.
What it was skews how anyone on this current team would see a pregame locker room, right? It's gone from, like, classroom to a locker room, right? But I don't, like, if Michigan State said, and I don't know if they would say it's the craziest thing they've ever seen, just a hunch.
I mean, Izzo on the days leading up to Michigan games is
exactly
out of his goddamn mind. Yes,
I think Juwan had a good coaching game overall. I think you have to give credit to the defense, like we talked about. Thought Michigan ran some really good after timeout stuff in a couple key spots.
You still don't like the zone.
I don't like the zone after timeouts.
With Teskey on the court.
Yeah, it did work with Austin
Davis. If Austin Davis is on the court, the zone is completely acceptable. I don't get it with John out there.
Yeah, they just like to mix it up after. Basically, I think it's so you can't run it after timeout set against them. Yeah, I thought I just really give Michigan a lot of credit for how they kept the game in front. That's how I describe it, right? Yeah. Just never let the game get out of hand for more than a couple possessions. And really the only, like if you look at 4-minute segments, I think the only one you'd really hit on was one in the first half and then the one that started the second half. Mm-hmm. And that's going to win you games if you can do that. And Michigan's recent home games been kind of getting blown off the court in the first 4 to 6 minutes of the game. Yeah. At least like put on their heels. So I think that's a step in the right direction without a doubt.
Is 10-10 on the table for them?
For Michigan?
Realistically?
I think you have to... If Michigan can win these 2 games this week, then I think anything is in play. Sure. I don't know... Like Michigan's schedule is tough, but who are you saying you're going into the game and Michigan has no chance? Like Rutgers, Purdue, Ohio State are all capable of just a bad game at any point, right?
Right. I mean, I think the 2 worst matchups are probably at Purdue, at Maryland, finishing out.
And yeah, and I just trust, like, I like those teams, I agree, but those aren't, like, I could see Michigan stealing one of those big road games. I mean, you're going to get one eventually, I feel like, at some point,
at this rate, Maryland might have the Big Ten championship locked up
wrapped up.
That game. Anthony Cowan Senior
Day. Are you going to apologize for all your Anthony Cowan slander?
I apologize to Anthony Cowan. He's had a wonderful year.
Yeah. Maryland's going to win the damn Big Ten with all you guys talking shit. Unbelievable.
They're about to be 10-3. Their next game is Nebraska at home. They have Nebraska and Northwestern. 2 of their 3. They're going to get, if they can beat Michigan State on the road next Saturday, they're going to be 12-3 in the league.
They're good. Turgeon wins 12 to 14 Big Ten games every year, and everyone acts like he sucks. So I don't know what you guys want from him.
You know I'm not the Turgeon hater. I make fun of Maryland, but I think I wouldn't fire Mark Turgeon.
I think you said it was ludicrous that I had Anthony Cowan on the all Big Ten list. Like,
what the hell does that have to do with Mark Turgeon?
They're tied.
No, they're not.
All right. What's Michigan State going this week? At Illinois, Maryland at home.
1-1.
2-0.
Wow.
I think this is a bounce back week. That's
a lot of faith. Those would be some pretty serious at Illinois. At Maryland at home would be some.
Yeah, I just think teams play differently when they're backed into a corner. And like Michigan was backed into a corner today. Michigan State was backed into a corner at Minnesota, I would say. Agree. And I think you'll get that version of Michigan State at Illinois, and I don't think Illinois is ready for that version of Michigan State. I don't think they'll blow them out or anything, but I like that spot. And I
think Illinois is going to lose back-to-back home games?
Yes.
Okay.
Illinois is a good team. I think they've done a great job this year. They're also 26th in KenPom. Their body of work is not that impressive if you look a little closer. They have some really good wins.
Right. Michigan State did beat them by 20 the last time.
Yeah, which
it was at home, but you know.
I like a 2-0 week for Michigan State here, I think.
Well, that would change things. People would be talking completely differently.
Yeah, they would. But like people just react to what happened.
Oh, of course.
It's hard you lose sight of the big picture.
No doubt.
And I don't know. I like Michigan State was going to lose some of these games, and that's what I said on a pod a few weeks ago. It doesn't mean they're somehow a different team than they were. Michigan State.
They literally lost 3 straight games the same exact time last year.
But they lost fewer games last year.
I know, but
Michigan State 4th in the Big Ten offensive efficiency, 1st in defense. Their defense is legit. I think their defense has been really, really good in the league. Can we talk about 3-point shooting real quick? Okay. I'm rambling now.
I love it. This is when it's good.
Michigan State gives up a decent amount of threes attempts. So we can't just hear after every game about how, well, this guy made all his threes. Like, Michigan got a lot of open threes, to the point where we said before the game, it was all going to come down to if Michigan can make its wide open threes.
Correct.
So if you're going to give up wide open threes, people are going to make them sometimes, right? Like, I don't know. Like, do you think Michigan State, so they're first in the Big Ten in 3-point accuracy defense, but 6th in 3-point volume. So the Ken Pom theory is that volume is what a defense controls. Accuracy is based on a combination of chance and how good the teams you play are, right? Like how good the shooters are.
Right.
So that number seems to be thrown around a lot, right? Like I always hear about whatever player Michigan State played against that hit
Everyone has a
few
career
more
game.
three.
Yeah.
But people hit over their average 3-point shooting quite a bit. Xavier Simpson, 36% 3-point shooter this year. That's not terrible.
No.
That's not Aaron Wheeler.
Right.
I mean, it's not Evan Boudreaux. I mean, what's Evan Boudreaux shooting? I know Aaron Wheeler's not shooting that, but like, I don't know.
Look, you're taking a shot at your own guy. My man. Goodness.
I don't know. That's where I'm at, and I don't know what to make of.
I mean, it's a great philosophy as long as you're playing at home, right? Teams are going to miss all these threes, but the second you go on the road and you're giving guys wide open threes, they're going to make them every time. I don't care if you're playing Nebraska. Like,
Nebraska will get them up.
that's right. That's right. I forgot they're like the 3-point shooting team in the league, but the point remains, like, those threes, I don't care. Like, we talked about, what do you let Xavier Simpson do in terms of shooting going in this game? I'm like, I'll play off of him and let him shoot as many as he wants. There's a difference between playing off a guy and just not guarding him. Like, the warm-ups that you saw, he was more guarded than some of the shots that he took in that game.
Yeah. And at least one was a scramble.
Totally.
So that happened.
And I think two guys went with one.
One
Michigan
rocket
player
just went way under.
Right.
And Teskey kind of just cleared him out. And Xavier had 6 or 7 feet of just open airspace.
Mm-hmm.
But I just think it's worth pointing out that, like, 2 years ago, if Simpson hit 4 threes, it would be a miracle.
Right.
This year, he's hit a few more threes, right?
Yes.
So I don't know. It's just my little rant on 3-point shooting.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, he's 7 for 14 his last 2 games.
We're including this 407 today. It's a bit
We went
skewed.
3 for 7 in the last game. I'm just like, he just did the same thing against Ohio State.
There's a name joke somewhere in there, but
But in league play for the year, he's 15 for 45. So, all right. Anything else?
I think that's a wrap. Nice,
Good work, man.
tight 57 minutes.
There we go. So we will record again. I have no idea when.
Maybe before the weekend or something.
Yeah, before the weekend. Yeah, maybe Friday.
We'll be back.
A Valentine's Day episode of the Moving Screen.
Maybe we can theme it somehow.
I love it. Oh, man, that's going to be great. Okay. So that'll do it for this week. We appreciate everyone listening. Make sure you leave a review in the iTunes store. Make sure you subscribe to UM Hoops. Make sure you subscribe to The Athletic. Great content on both and much more to come. For Dylan and for Otis, I'm Brendan. Thanks for listening. And be sure to tip your bartenders and your servers.